Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Adam Balderstone for another episode of Bedrock and Balderstone, and we are talking about episode 11 of I, Claudius, A God in Colchester. This is the penultimate episode, right? I think 12 is the final episode.
I believe this is the penultimate episode. Yes.
So we just have one episode left after this, and this is the one where everything with Messalina comes to a head, and also things with Herod come to a head as well.
To a head is a very ironic, very appropriate. Not use of the term.
And so in this episode, Messalina really, as we said in the last scene, Messalina gave Claudius a look of just utter disdain and hatred. And this episode is sort of the fulfillment of that utter disdain and hatred, where Claudius is on his campaign in Britain, where he's had a successful campaign. He's about to come back in triumph, and Messalina has now taken numerous lovers and even holds a contest against the Guild of Prostitutes to see who can have the most lovers in an evening, in which she wins. But then she does something truly dangerous. She takes the new elected consul. I think his name was Gaius Silius. Is that correct? And she takes him as a lover, but she genuinely is in love with him. And they eventually start plotting to get married publicly. Is sort of a public declaration of their dislike of Claudius and just how lowly they were, like how low their opinion is of him. And then through that they want to basically restore the Republic or either put Gaius Silius on the throne. It's a little bit unclear what
I think they made I don't know what their real intention was. The stated intention Silius gives is, we'll bring the Republic back. I mean, whether it would have really played out that way if their plan worked is different, but that was his stated.
Well, and the reason why I gave that some credence in the show is because he said it to her when they were having a private conversation where they were both being incredibly honest with each other. And
That's true. That's true.
Unless he just, I don't think, she doesn't strike me as a Republican. Person.
Honestly, having not watched the show in a while, my memories being very vague, I was wondering what her reaction would be to bringing the Republic. I was wondering, was she going to go, no, you can't bring, I like being the emperor's wife. You have to be the new emperor. But she didn't in any way protest it.
But again, maybe that was just the most plausible way for them to continue doing. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not so bad to be remembered as the person who restores the Republic. Do you know what I mean? That's
turning a selfish act into a positive act, basically.
But I liked his whole thing where he was like, we're guilty. Like she's sort of still deluded and thinking that they can get away with what they're doing. And he's like, no, we're going to get caught eventually. And he's kind of right. They had to act. But they plot against Claudius and they force Claudius's hand. And his very frustrated advisors are able to bring Calpurnia in to convince him of what's going on. And he has everybody arrested. And this culminates, spoilers, in Messalina being beheaded. And Claudius, issues the order while he's drunk under the guidance of Pallas. Yeah. We also start to see signs of Pallas's own scheming occurring in this episode. We already got indications of his bad moral character, but here we really start to see some other things take shape, where he really stays his hand on the issue of Messalina. And it's pretty obvious that Narcissus wants to tell Claudius about all this stuff, and Pallas has been the one who has been preventing him from doing so, perhaps wisely, because when Calpurnia does tell Claudius what's been going on, he freaks out even against her, and she's probably the person that he's most kindly disposed towards. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, exactly. It's understandable why they were reluctant, because we already saw in the previous episode how somebody laying out and explaining what Messalina is doing can not help you in the least. So.
And so I guess we could start with talking about some of the characters they introduced this episode. One of them being Minister. I don't know what your response to him was, but he's kind of a colorful character. And he's Messalina's lover, but he's not really. He's really more of like a go-between for her by the end of the episode. Like she certainly enjoys spending time with him, but it's Silius that she really ends up being in love with.
Yeah, neither of them are in love with each other. It's a fling they're both happening that just they're having a good time, but there's no deeper relationship there at all.
But what was your opinion of him as a character, Minister? Did he make much of an impression?
Yeah. He's a fantastic character, I think, in the show. I mean, he I don't know. You kind of put me on the spot.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I can talk about him if you want, because if you
you talk about him.
So I don't know why I find him a very intriguing character. He really livens up the show in a lot of ways. Like, I think this would have been a much more boring episode without him for some reason.
Yeah, definitely.
And he has
Silius isn't that exciting a character. He kind of makes a nice balance.
But he's kind of like a more, I don't know how to put it. He's sort of like Caligula light. Do you know what I mean? He's got a lot of the features of Caligula, but he's not nearly as dangerous. In many ways, he's having a good time, but he gets drawn into this thing, and you get the impression that he might not even really want to be as all in as Messalina is with everything that she's doing.
Yeah.
And but he's the one who comes up with the idea of the contest with the Guild of Prostitutes, and it's a famous scene, and I love the line he talks about where he says copulation on a cosmic scale is the is how he describes it, and basically the scene is to show just how like Messalina's big thing is that she sort of embodies like all of the worst qualities of the strong female characters that you've had leading up to this episode, but none of the good qualities, I would say.
Yeah.
So she has like Julia's lascivious nature. She has Livilla's love-obsessed nature, and she has Livia's scheming nature and intelligence. So I guess there is that good quality there. But it's not balanced in the way it is with any of those characters. With a lot of those other characters, there are things that you can really respect about them, and it's a lot harder to have any respect for Messalina. But so much so that even the prostitute that she's competing against just has nothing but contempt for Messalina during the scene.
It is interesting how it's like in one of the first Messalina scenes, you kind of, where she kind of says she wants to be the Livia to his Augustus. It's like there's a sense that she almost has some level of it's not like I entirely trust her in that scene. The sense she has at least some sense of wanting to achieve big things, but it's like at some point she just lost that. It's like there's nothing to her scheming other than just doing crazy things and having a good time, basically. And
in the end, she can't even, when they offer her the dagger when she is about to be beheaded, she can't even kill herself. And I don't know, I feel like Livia could have done that. I feel like Livilla probably could have done that. You know what I mean? I think Julia could have done it. I don't think Messalina can do that. And so, but after the contest, or around the time of the contest, no, I think after, is when Claudius returns from Britain, and that's when Pallas and Narcissus are trying to figure out how to deal with this Messalina thing. And Narcissus basically says, just we basically it's too dangerous. There's not really anything they can do. And they refer to it as the old problem. Like there's just no there's no way for them to breach this subject with Claudius because they know he'll fly off the handle. But there's I don't know if you call him dim-witted, but maybe a naive. I think he's a Praetorian guard. I think his name was Justus, and he goes and speaks to Pallas, and tries to. He basically says that they need to do something. Because he overheard the copulation contest or something, and he wants to report it. He mentioned it to his superior, and his superior did nothing. So now he's going to Pallas, and Pallas basically says, "You're an idiot and a dead man." Your superior is in the inner circles of friends with Messalina, and so I'm pretty sure that the execution warrant is already on its way. And I thought it's just a great scene because this guy suddenly realizes this midway through the conversation, and it's like, what, what can I do? And Palis is just like, nothing. You must, you can die. That's what you can do.
Go get buried. Yeah, it's that's a good scene, and I mean it's I like the way the show is just willing to leave things completed like that. We don't need to see that he dies or anything. The show just sets that up, and you just assume he dies off stage. It doesn't need to fill in the blanks for you. But
go ahead.
Yeah, jumping back a little bit too to Messalina and her inability to use the dagger too. I think there's two things going on. I mean, obviously she doesn't have a lot of the character that would let her kill herself to save her dignity to an extent, but there's also the fact she can never let go of the fact that she is 100% sure if she could get 1 minute with Claudius, she could talk her way out of it. So it's like, as long as she, once she's killing herself, she takes off that second, but it's like she's stalling and stalling for time. She set the kids off. She thinks Claudius is going to show up, and so it's. Yeah, I feel like that's a big part of it. That she's still scheming up till the end. It's like she's just buying time.
By the way, I don't know if this is something I'm always trying to figure out, and I can't remember what happens in the book. But Palis disappears, if I remember, in the final. Like, we just don't see him again. I don't think there may be a line of dialogue about it, but I don't think so. I think that letter explains why we don't see Narcissus again.
Okay.
I might have said Palis on accident, but Narcissus, the meek one, the nice advisor, the advisor who seems to have Claudius's best interest in mind, and takes umbrage at all the things Messalina is doing and rebukes her in the scene before she's executed.
Yeah.
When she hands that letter to Claudius, I have no doubt that one of the people she's going to be naming as is Narcissus, and so and I apologize. I think I might have been switching their names around because for some reason I feel like the other guy should be named Narcissus because he behaves more like a narcissist to me.
Yeah. It's that makes sense. But no, I think you've mostly been getting the names wrong, or I don't know. I'm really names right. I mean, you've mostly been getting the names right. Sorry, I'm not very awake today.
That's okay. But no, but it's a mistake I always make because he has these two Greek advisors. So I adore these guys. They're really only important these 2 episodes. But even in the scene when they go well, first before we get to the scene, I do want to mention one quote before I forget. When the Praetorian reported to Palis. Where Palis is sitting at the desk and the Praetorian says to him, like, well, when are you going to tell him? And he says, I will choose my time and tell him, when I want to. And then he says, I have learned to tread very carefully in a burning building. And I just, it's a melodramatic line, but I think it really captures it kind of tells you so much about this guy. Like these are the kinds of people who thrive in this intrigue-ridden environment.
Well, it's basically your mistake isn't my problem. I don't need to make a move now. It's like you screwed yourself, but I'm not going to up my agenda and go, okay, well, since you're in trouble, I'm going to have your back. It's like, no, sorry. Yeah. That's it.
No, and that's in fact and then the guy says, well, what can I do? And he says, well, what can a dead man do? Go and get buried. It's a real, he's a great character. But I also love in this, the physical humor between him and Narcissus, like the scene where they have Calpurnia tell Claudius what's going on. And Claudius is just getting angrier and angrier, and she's weeping the whole time. It's funny because Calpurnia is really probably the only person on the earth who really is 100% genuine towards him, and he even can't believe her. But then Narcissus and Palis come out, and they're like, no, it's all true. But they keep taking turns talking, and they keep like putting their hands on each other to sort of force the other one forward, and then pushing the other person's hands. It's just this great sort of physical scene. So I just really love these characters. But yeah, I think another thing worth talking about here is the Herod storyline, because this is where Herod rebels against Claudius, and I think his name is Marcus Vibius. He's one of the governors. I think he was the governor of Spain or something. He reports Herod's actions, and Claudius is like really insistent on knowing why. And it comes to light that Herod might believe that he's the Messiah, and the reason he believes the Messiah is because he was born in Bethlehem. And according to, and again, this is where they insert sort of fake Roman prophecies to sort of, you know what I mean? But like Thrasyllus has this prophecy that says that the Messiah is going to have to be born in Bethlehem. Now the audience knows, oh, that's obviously supposed to be Jesus, but Claudius reveals to the audience, but Herod was born in Bethlehem because his mother was was taken ill or something and had to give birth there. And we also learn in either this scene or a later one, when the rest of the report comes, that Thrasyllus also predicted that the death date of the Messiah was going to be the year that Livia died, which is 29 AD, which is a very convenient date as well. So there's all these, but I think the other interesting thing is with the Herod character, they kind of weave in both the Jew, like Josephus and New Testament ideas about Herod to sort of create this this part of the story with his character, and so I don't know. It's an interesting end. I don't know how you feel about what happened with Herod, because it's pretty grim.
It is. I mean, obviously, as Claudius says in the episode, it's the last of his friends is gone now, and it's an interesting ending too, in that it doesn't. It's like Claudius is never forced to actually take an action exactly. It happens in a somewhat magical, within the context of the show, way of him suffering this horrible curse for his hubris.
Well, and that's taken from the Bible too. That's the.
I know. I'm saying, but it's taken as a thing that it's. I was saying that it's incorporated into the show, and it is an interesting way to come about it, because it's interesting with him having that ending, because he's such a pragmatic character. For him to have taken this route of cloaking himself as the Messiah when he's, it would seem a very cynical move for him to take.
It could have been, but also Claudius is convinced that he genuinely believes he's the Messiah. And so
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's this kind of a shift there that seems to occur.
Well, I don't know. What do you think it was? Do you think it was a genuine belief, or do you think it was a cynical political move?
It's really hard to say, because we see this all at such a remove. I mean, we get to read the last letter that he sends to Claudius, but it's a very offstage thing. I think there's a lot of ambiguity there, and I mean, people can kind of combine those things at the same time. You can make a cynical move that you then start to believe, that I am this guy. So it's really hard to say.
And also, this is obviously very different from like the historical Herod that he's based on is a much more complicated, and there's many more alternate explanations and alternate accounts of his reign and everything. I know, like in Judaism, he's viewed very differently, for example. But I don't know. I think that his character ends so sadly. It really highlights all, because he's the most colorful character in the show to a degree. I mean, with the exception of people like Caligula, who are colorful in very dark ways. He's the most colorful character that you like.
Non-crazy character.
Yeah. He's somebody you'd want to know. Do you know what I mean? Somebody you'd want to be in your group of friends. And and he's charming, and I feel like the sadness of his death in this and how it plays out, and how it's kind of a betrayal, but there's this bitter sweetness to the end of it when he sends the letter. It just contrasts really nicely and highlights, the personality.
And the thing is, I mean, it's an interesting thing about the difference between friendship and politics too, because him wanting to, free the East from Rome, it's like that's not a bad motivation. I mean, yeah, it puts him at odds with Claudius, but I feel like it's an entirely reasonable thing to want.
Well, and also, and he does even continue to give Claudius that same piece of advice in the letter where he says, "Trust no," so he still has some concern for him.
Well, exactly. I mean, when he gives the warning the first time in the previous episode, it's him saying, "Look, just keep in mind, I have my political goals and you have your political goals, and those come before anything. It's like I have to do what's right for my people."
But then right after Herod's death, right after he's been told trust no one, like literally, like moments later, he gives Messalina the ability to use his seal, which we know is a fatal move. We know that's not going to end well for you if you have a scheming significant other in the palace. And this is when the plot with Silius really begins to take shape. And I don't know, how did you feel about, I don't know, I guess about the Silius character, number one? Like, I know he's not really fleshed out all that much, but did you have any thoughts on the conspiracy and whether, like, I guess here's my question. Did they go about it the right way? Like,
did they go about it the right way? I mean, obviously, as far as thinking of there's a number of questions to unpack there. As far as Silius as a character, the most interesting scene with him, of course, is the one where he's in bed with Messalina and he tells her, "Look, we can't just keep hiding this because it's gonna come up sometime. So let's make a move." I mean, I think. I mean, it's kind of ironic, I guess, that they decide they need to move quickly, but when they do make their move, they don't expect Claudius to come back. They don't expect him to. So they think they've got to,
he's in Ostia when all this is happening, right? He's going to the Ostia harbor.
Yeah, and it's a case where the whole thing, I mean, if they had a couple more days, they might have been able to cement some power, and Claudius would have lost it. But it's like they celebrated too much before they completed the deal. They're partying when they have before the victory, and I think that's what really did them in.
Here's what I think went bad with this plan. It was the wrong plan. I think just from their, I mean, obviously you don't want them to succeed, but from the point of view of these characters, like he said, he makes a very compelling argument. They're guilty, so they must act because guilt, requires daring, and they have powerful friends who share their danger. I'm just quoting him now. And so he says so then he reasons that if they marry openly and publicly, all Rome will see how much contempt they have for Claudius, and they can declare the Republic restored. It's a really naive plan. Because you don't just need the key. You need the key figures that support you to do something. You know what I mean? And what Claudius is able to do is he doesn't have certain officers that are loyal to him anymore, but the soldiers are all still loyal. It's the same sort. So he's able to just send the soldiers in and arrest everybody. It's sort of it's like a paler version of the Sejanus problem. And so I think that you obviously just needed to remove the questionable officers, and then that was that. Yeah. So I think what they should have done is he trusts Messalina utterly. All she has to do is poison his food. That's all she has to do. Here, drink this, and he's going to drink it, and there's no question. And it can even be done in private, out of view from everybody, with a poison that's going to kill him hours later. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think one thing to consider too is Messalina had very strong personal charm. She had a bunch of people in her circle that she had totally under her sway. But talking about like the common soldiers, it's like Romans on the whole were pretty conservative people,
Yeah.
realistically. Like your average Roman citizen, it's like if everyone knew the kind of thing she was up to, it's like I don't think the average Roman soldier would really be that approving of having a contest to see who could sleep with the most. It's like I think it's like she had this feeling that everyone supported her because she had this circle around her of people that did, but. Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of serious disapproval to that kind of thing.
It's just the weakest on-screen coup ever. It's like they're having a party and they're just screaming their heads off as the soldiers come and arrest them all, and they just have no idea. Mm-hmm. It's just
there was no teeth to their coup at all. They had no force.
But I kind of think this sort of highlights one of the themes of the show, which is that the sort of enervation of all of those kinds of forces in the like the whole there are no lions in Rome anymore. Mm-hmm. A lion could stage a proper coup if a lion really wanted to, but now you just have these people that are more interested in the party than they are in asserting whatever it was they were trying to assert there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting things with this episode too, because on top of the like I said, it plays interesting things with your motivations, because like I said, going back to Herod, obviously what Herod is doing is not bad in any strict moral sense, but it's like you tend so you don't know how to feel. But with this, it's with this Claudius.
I apologize. I should have turned off my phone, and I did not.
But yeah, Claudius is in a position where his big thing always was restoring the Republic, and he's kind of pushed in his position where it's like, here's a coup where they're going to restore the Republic, and he has to smash it.
No,
it's interesting that isn't even a moral question for him. It's like he could, if there was a scene where it's like, they want to restore the Republic, and but I do want the Republic back, but no, that isn't even in his head that he states anymore.
Well, the whole thing with him and the Republic really gets questionable by the end, because his way of restoring the public is to let the poison seep out eventually by marrying the who's the mother of Nero? Is it Agrippina, or I can't remember her name.
I can't recall.
But it's like one of his nieces, I think, and or a great niece, or some distant connection to him, and he just starts enabling all this terribleness, and that's his solution. Whereas all he really needs to do is just, even if he doesn't want to relinquish power during his lifetime, he could just have the Republic restored after his death. You know what I mean? He could, It seems just like
bequeath it back to the Senate upon his death. Yeah.
It's I don't know. So
then again, I don't know how well that would work, because I feel like if you really wanted to restore the Republic, the emperor would need to oversee it to make sure it stuck, because otherwise. We've seen too many times where someone is dying or dead and people play shenanigans.
Yeah.
It's like, on his deathbed, Claudius said to me that he has had a change of heart and I should be emperor.
And just to clarify, Nero's mother was Agrippina Minor, so okay. Agrippina the Younger. I don't know. I just feel like it's like you say, like, but again. I can understand, because in this issue, he wants the Republic restored, but this is certainly not the way that he wants the Republic restored.
It isn't. But I'm saying it's just I don't think there's any road where he would go along with this. That's not going to happen. I'm just saying I'm just saying it's interesting that it isn't even like a momentary irony that he finds or anything. It's just he just it's just something he's gonna do.
But then they arrest them, and then they get him drunk, and they have him sign a bunch of execution warrants, including one for Messalina, and then that's when they go and they execute her. And that scene is, I think, it's a pretty well done scene, and I think she does a good job. I mean, again, she doesn't come out well in terms of like how you respect, you don't like the character, but you're not supposed to. But she's basically hysterical, and the mother is, it's very interesting to see sort of the mother who's sort of been kind of timid the whole time and sort of been torn between her loyalty to her daughter and like her sense of duty and honor, and she just tries to persuade Messalina to take the dagger, and just says it's done, like there's she's not even going to make an effort to try to save Messalina. And it's not, I don't think it's out of a sense of self-preservation, because I think she's just tired of I mean, she, even though she's too timid to do anything about it, she has a sense of decency, and Messalina taking the dagger is the only decent path forward at that point. But she can't do it. She's unable to, and so we don't actually see them cut off her head, but they do it very effectively in terms of how it's conveyed by, I think they lift her head, and then the camera pans violently to the right, and you hear a sound, and and she says, "Not my head." That's the big thing she says throughout the scene. Not my head, not my head. She doesn't want her head cut off, which is understandable.
I would not like my head cut off.
And then the next scene, Claudius is told, and he is not pleased, but he basically cries, and also it's just so the way this scene is shot is you have Caligula sitting down at a table, and Pallas and Narcissus are shot from the back. We never see their faces. I don't think.
You said Caligula. Did you mean Claudius?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Claudius. Claudius is sitting down at the table. I'm getting the names all mixed up today. Claudius is at the table, and Pallas and Narcissus are shot from the back. And they say, he says, "I'm ready to see my wife now," and they're like, "Oh, but sir, you signed the warrant for execution last night." Or she was executed at your orders, I think what they said.
Yes.
And he just has a look on his face. And then they change the subject to news from Britain.
Yeah.
And this is where the title of the episode comes from. They have decided to worship you as a god in Colchester. And it's sort of like they're trying to be upbeat about how they deliver this news. And
it's it's kind of effort. It's like, there's times you can change the subject to cheer someone up, but oh, your wife, you ordered her executed, don't you remember? And then, by the way, it's like, you're only poisoning the good news at that point.
So it's funny because so number one, I wanted to know if you had any, if you don't have thoughts on it, you don't, because it's a little bit of a vague thing, I think. But if you had any thoughts on why they titled the episode "A God in Colchester."
Boy, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's well, from one angle too. I mean, it's worth keeping in mind that this is both a British novel and a British show. So it's the tie between Claudius as someone that had an effect on British history, I feel, is something that gives the character interest. But I don't know if that's the reason they titled the episode there. But it's
well, I think I think that's possibly one reason. I think also it harkens back because Augustus was made a god in Syria, in Palmyra, and remember he had that line, how can I I think he said something along the lines of, "If I'm a god even in Palmyra, how do I cure gout?" Something like that. And so I feel like it's connecting back to the Augustus thing too, where
that's true. That makes a lot more sense. It's because I mean it is kind of funny. He gets established as being a god, at this moment he feels utterly bereft and powerless, to an extent.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like that's the best thing that you've been elevated to godhood. I mean, in Roman terms, that's like Livia was striving in her later years to become a goddess, just so that she could eliminate all of the bad things and I think we have plenty of reason to believe that Claudius thinks all that stuff is kind of true. So it's it is a nice sort of coming together of it's the best of times and the worst of times.
We would believe that Claudius believes in all that stuff because, I mean, just in this episode alone, he spends a lot of time obsessing about astrology and the Messiah thing and whatever. He takes that utterly seriously. There's no, he's not a secular person.
And so I feel like this is his Apollonia moment from like The Godfather. Do you know what I mean? Like this is like, and so I think that's why the title is so important, because it's the coldest depiction of becoming a god you could see. It just has no meaning for him, because it seems like all purpose has been drained from his life when he's killed Messalina. And I guess, and also the realization that Messalina never really cared for him probably is dawning on him.
I suppose too. It's you've talked before about how a lot of the things that happen with Claudius are kind of a paler shadow of things that happened earlier with Augustus, and it's like becoming a god in Syria. Syria is like a pretty impressive place, whereas it's like that's where Augustus became a god. Claudius became a god in Colchester.
Yeah, I guess it's recently conquered, backwater where I think, what do they get there? Tin or lead or something? There's like I forget what it's well, I won't get into it. There's a side subject I could have got into there. But yeah, that is a good point. It's kind of like, it's a pale imitation of what came before. All this stuff is. She's a pale imitation of Livia. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I would call Claudius a pale imitation of Augustus. I guess he is, because Augustus really like established this line that he's in, and Augustus, despite his flaws with Livia, I think he Rome did better under him in the context of this show than it seems to be doing under Claudius. Though Claudius did take, Britain. That's no small accomplishment.
No. I mean, it's once again saying everything is kind of a somewhat smaller scale thing. I mean, it's like you say, it's a trend, but obviously Claudius, I mean, even it was brought up early in the show, Claudius is the one who nurtured Rome and brought it back when it was badly wounded. So it's not, I don't mean to be overly harsh on it.
But here's where it is. Claudius, the show over the course of the series, it's the whittling away of the company that Claudius keeps and the family. And so when the show starts, you have this really big family and again, Claudius isn't even born, but that period of time is where he has all his friends and his family and this great patriarch and this great matriarch, and it creates a warm sense of family and belonging. And now it's like all those people are gone, and it's just Claudius, and he hasn't been able to reestablish that sense of warmth, and as dysfunctional as it was under Augustus, it was still there was a thriving family environment.
We have actually a big, I mean, during the early show, you have all these scenes of everyone gathered around on the couches watching entertainment and stuff, and people chatting with each other. Whereas we have a scene in this where it's there's the voiceover talking about how even his slaves knew and they were laughing at him, and it's just Claudius on this couch in a room alone with a bunch of silent slaves, and it's like that never would have been an evening in the palace during Augustus's reign.
No, he would have been. He was either working on a project or he was doing something. You know, he just was not built that way. Claudius is more studious and he's more of a scholar, so it kind of makes sense that he might have slipped into this without really taking any effort to build a stronger social network around himself. But even so, I mean, he did try. He's married. You know, all the basic elements are there that should be, you know, providing this sort of family environment that he grew up in, but he's just not able to achieve it. And and so I don't know, but again, to me, it really highlights how the show is really ultimately kind of about family. That's sort of the heart of the show, and that's why I always point to the Caligula and Claudius episodes as being so significant. And that's why these later episodes, they feel empty. Because deliberately, I think, but I feel like they feel empty, and you feel like I really wish it was like 3 episodes ago or 4 episodes ago, because you're just noticing how like absent people are, and you really pick up on it when Herod dies. That's when I think it really becomes unavoidably obvious to the viewer. So I don't know. We're on 40 minutes, and I have to head out, but I think that we have one more episode left. Did you like this episode? I didn't even ask you that. Did you enjoy this episode, or did you? I don't think there's a bad episode of this whole series. So, there's not one episode I dislike. I think this is a very good episode.
Yeah, and I mean I agree with that. I enjoyed this episode. Again, I think the best episodes are a little bit behind us, but there's only so much you can do to match what goes on in the Caligula episodes, in my opinion. And so we'll be back on probably sometime this week. We are going to also be doing the new Doctor Who, so that airs tonight, and that means we'll probably be covering Doctor Who before we cover the next Claudius episode. So hopefully people will be forgiving of that. But it's been how long since we've done like an actual episode of Doctor Who that's airing? It's been a while.
I think it's been a year and a half or so since it aired. I think it aired in the spring last time. So
it's funny, like Doctor Who ends, and like for the next 4 months, I just want a new episode of Doctor Who to come out. But then by the time Doctor Who comes out again, it's like all of my enthusiasm is drained, and I'm gonna watch it, but it's like I don't have that level of like I must watch Doctor Who, and I feel
I feel a little disconnected myself. I mean, like I said, I felt that before the last season, though.
Yeah,
so, and I enjoyed the last season for the most part.
That was my next statement, though. I think almost not being keyed up to see the next episode ends up working in the episode's favor, because I'm not like, I also don't have all these expectations of walking in that it has to meet all these things that I want. And so,
I got to take it on its own terms. But to give an idea of how long it's been since we last reviewed Doctor Who, the second episode of the previous season was the first podcast I ever did with you. So,
that's.
If you ever, I think you did a YouTube video about the first episode, and I watched the video and I talked about it to you. You're like, hey, do you want to do a podcast? Yep. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how long we've done all of Babylon 5. All of that has happened in between, which was an enormous
5
project.
Seasons. We did 5 seasons of Babylon 5.
We did 5 seasons of Babylon 5. We did the entire Return of Condor Heroes in between. So it's been a long road.
and it's funny now. Like I know at some point we want to revisit a wuxia episode, and I think the big one we were talking about was the Flame's daughter, because that was really hot at the time. And now it's like it's obvious that that's sort of not as relevant because so much time has passed. And now so we tend to do these really long shows that take a while to work our way through. Unfortunately, it means things don't always work out the way they are with Doctor Who right now, where like it's lining up perfectly because we're ending Claudius just as the new Doctor Who is coming on, which will be, I think, enable us to focus on that more. But yeah, so anyways, we'll be back on next week or sometime during this week with Doctor Who, and the next episode, I Claudius, and then on Friday we're going to be doing Black Magic 2, I believe. So Black Magic 2 is our next wuxia weekend, and just by the way, we know it's not a wuxia movie. It's just that we
it's Halloween.
Yeah, it's Halloween.
We're gonna bend the rules.
Yeah. But I do encourage people to check this one out and to listen to the last episode, because we were very divided on Black Magic, and I even got a comment on one of the Facebook posts about Black Magic by a person who also was not very impressed with the movie. So
really?
Yeah. No, there was a very strong expression of dislike of that film. And
I liked it. I had a lot of criticisms during the podcast, but I liked it on the whole. I don't know.
Well, I think you and me were the two that really liked it. I think Kenny was maybe a little more on the fence with it, and I think Dion really didn't like it.
She did not like it.
She did not like that movie.
I really didn't expect her to.
But I think but I found that's a divisive movie, so I'm curious how people will feel about part 2. And so we'll be back on Friday with that, and then more discussion to follow. And until then, we will talk to you later.